Weapons have existed as long as humankind. For millennia, they have determined the destiny of generations. Weapons bring suffering and death. They show what humans can inflict upon other humans. But they're also intended to keep the peace and pave new ways for technology. Three weapons that increase the bloodshed in battles. Deadly innovations. Their invention changed the course of global history. Detailed experiments reveal the secrets of these weapons. The Henry rifle, making it rain bullets in the American Civil War.
This weapon was a game changer. It made world history.
The longsword, the medieval superweapon.
In battle, a real-life battle, this could mean life or death.
The Scorpio, Roman high-tech tool with enormous impact.
That's gone straight through a millimeter of steel.
Our first weapon is known as the Scorpio. It is a Roman ranged weapon. What makes it so special? Lower Saxony, Germany, 230 CE. Thousands of Roman legionnaires are marching south in heavy armor and with heavy equipment. Along the western end of the Harz highland area, they face Germanic warriors in battle. The Romans storm a hill and claim the victory. How did they do it? Archaeologists have been unearthing remains of the battle since 2008. The Hartshorn is one of the most important dig sites in Germany. The experts are surprised about one thing in particular, the large number of bolt heads. Many of them are bent. They must have hit their goal at full speed.
The archaeological
finds from the Hartshorn suggest that the Romans used catapults with bolts in a very targeted manner there. Hundreds of bolts were found, still buried deeply within the ground. Experts were able to reconstruct the trajectory, and based on the direction the shots were fired in, they think the Romans actively tried to stop a Teutonic attack with those catapults.
The Romans call their bolt catapult Scorpio, probably because their form bears a similarity to the dangerous arachnids. A legion of 5,000 men carries up to 60 of these weapons. The Scorpio must have been really efficient to make it worth the cumbersome transportation. In addition to the bolt heads found in the excavations, the detailed documentations by Roman engineer Marcus Vitruvius Pollio revealed the most about how the weapon was constructed. His work on ancient technology and engineering skills are still astonishing to this day. This copy of his 10 books on architecture dates back to the 15th century. In this work, written in the 1st century BCE, he describes the Scorpio as a weapon that has, quote, been invented for safety's sake and as a protection against danger. There are depictions of the Scorpio on the famous Trajan's column from 113 CE as well. We can easily see two large cylinders left and right from the arm's trajectory. Is this the secret behind its enormous impact? How does this weapon work? Why do Germanic warriors dread the Scorpio? Military historian Stephen Bull is fascinated by the Roman art of engineering. Today, he wants to conduct an experiment with a Scorpio built according to historical examples. One weapon, various ways of building it. They all have one thing in common. They have a firing channel for the bolt, a sinew, and throwing arms. ideas that the Romans did not come up with themselves.
When the Romans got hold of good ideas, they invariably improved them. And with the Scorpio, they take a Greek Hellenistic throwing engine and they turn it into a useful battlefield weapon. This isn't just a siege machine, this is now part of the way the Roman army fights battle as well as siege. So they make it lighter, they make it more portable, they make it easier to move, and they make it more effective by increasing the power and increasing the quality of the projectiles. It's just an all-round upgrade.
How much impact does the Scorpio really have? And how precisely can you hit a target? Distance to target in the first experiment, 20 meters. Stephen Bull and his team prepare the Scorpio for firing. They push the adjustable sleigh forwards, pull the sinew into place, and push the sleigh back again. The last step is aiming the artillery at the target.
So I'm ready with the bolt. And I'm ready to shoot. Not bad. It's on target. So this has been a pretty effective shot. It's actually gone all the way into a board, a couple of centimetres thick, and doubtless you can see the end of the arrow, the bolt, projecting on the other side of the board.
A mobile artillery weapon, the Scorpio combines firing power and precision. Thin wooden pieces enables its relatively light construction. In order to transport it, the Romans disassemble the Scorpio into separate parts and put it back together where they want to use it.
The Scorpio depended on the principle of torsion. Its levers were embedded in skeins of tightly twisted rope. When the trigger was released, that force was released, and the arrow shot forward with tremendous power.
In ancient times, the torsion bundles are made of horse or human hair, or animal sinew braided into bundles. They store energy when twisted. The energy is transmitted directly to the projectile upon firing. Our Scorpio reconstruction has two of these tightly twisted ropes, housed in a typical bronze cylinders. One assistant has to retighten them regularly. In our reconstruction, they are made of synthetic fibers that are more weather-resistant than the animal sinew used by the Romans. In a final step, Stephen Bull inserts a pointed bolt which is 60 centimeters long.
The Roman Empire had very few essential weapons. The gladius is one of them, the pilum, things like this. The Scorpio is one of the weapons that helps them to improve their performance, and we know that they use it in some very interesting places. In Britain, it's used to capture some very large Iron Age fortresses on the tall hills. So it's a very useful artillery piece to bring up for assault operations and to use in battle.
Gaul, 52 BCE. The Roman troops under Gaius Julius Caesar have been trying to conquer the land for 5 years. Time and again, they have to defeat revolts of Gallic rulers. And now, Caesar is facing a new threat. The Gauls are intending to unite under their leader, Vercingetorix.
Vercingetorix is significant because he's the first person to persuade all of the Gauls, or almost all of them, that unless they want to become part of the universal Roman Empire and lose their identity, they're going to have to fight. And it's no good one of the tribes fighting. All the tribes have to fight. They all have to fight together, and they have to believe in something more than their small tribal groups. And he makes enormous progress in building this sense of identity, which some French people will look back on as the beginnings of a modern France.
But the legionnaires are merciless, also when it comes to using the Scorpio. Caesar wrote, "A Gaul before the gate of the town was pierced with a bolt from a Scorpio on the right side and fell dead. Another Gaul stepped over him to fight in his place. He got shot by an arrow from a Scorpio as well." Caesar defeats the Gauls. Their leader, Vercingetorix, is forced to surrender. The Gauls' resistance is broken. Legend has it that Vercingetorix had to lay down all his weapons in front of Caesar's feet after his capitulation. The scene has also been immortalized in drawings and in the first book from the Asterix comic book series. The many adventures of Asterix and Obelix are based on historical facts. The Roman occupation of Gaul. In the comic series, the Gauls, unwilling to surrender, defend their last stronghold, a small village at the northern shore of France. They have plenty of clever ideas and magic potion. The life of Gauls and Romans, and often also their weapons, are a recurring topic in the Asterix series. The drawings of siege weapons and fortifications impress with their level of detail and accuracy. Generally speaking, they correspond to the originals. Whether it's a Roman camp with correctly depicted tent rows or their famous battle formation, it has all been captured in the comics. Reality, however, is probably far crueler. Every legion deploys about 60 Scorpios. According to Caesar's accounts, they basically mowed down their enemies. Once aimed, the weapon is said to reliably hit the same target with every shot. Stephen Bull wants to find out if that is really possible.
That way. That's it. That's okay. Yeah. Looks good to me.
Stephen Bull has his men aim the Scorpio. Fire at will.
Ah.
Will the next shots really hit the same spot?
So we've got a couple of shots which are pretty close together here. That's reasonable. Maybe 45 centimetres, 50 centimetres away from the other side of the group. And we also had a couple of misses.
For the ancient world, this is remarkably accurate. But what about penetrating power? Can the Scorpio bolts also pierce through armor and shields?
What we have here is a 1mm steel plate. We're not really going for accuracy, we're going for penetration. Let's see how it does. That's gone straight through a millimetre of steel. The heavy bolt's head has focused the force on the point. It's not come all the way through the wood, but it's nailed the metal to the wood. If you'd been wearing this metal as armour, the result wouldn't be very pleasant. So we're going to try and get the arrow out of the steel plate. I think it'll come given some effort. Oh. Oh. Yes. It appears to have gone maybe 1.5 centimetres. So it's gone through the armour and then more than 1 centimetre behind. Quite a nasty injury.
The Scorpio has passed this test, but can it perform even better?
So we've succeeded in penetrating 1mm of steel. Just to make life difficult for ourselves, we've added a second plate to make it 2mm of steel. This is going to be a serious test of penetration. Hit the target, bottom right.
How deep did the boat head go into the steel?
Not very deep, but certainly through both steel plates. So the first plate's come off, and we can see the second plate underneath. The penetration through the second plate is obviously not as serious as the penetration through the first plate, but it's still gone all the way through. So this is the first hole, all the way through the plate, and this is the second hole. Not so deep, but still all the way through, and I can feel the wood behind.
Based on the archaeological excavations at the Hartshorn, experts estimate that it was possible to fire deadly shots with a Scorpio over a distance of up to 500 meters. It is one of the most efficient ranged weapons of the ancient world. The Romans built the Scorpio for several centuries. It remains unclear when it disappeared from the legion's equipment. It is possible that the torsion technique, which is quite complex to operate, was replaced by the more simple mechanism of the swinging arms of the catapults. Our next weapon, the sword. It is intrinsically tied to the medieval world of knights. But the sword is more than just a weapon of war. It is a status symbol, the epitome of power, the stuff legends are made of. The Battle of Lechfeld near Augsburg, South Germany in 955. King Otto I defends the Christian East Francia against the attacking Hungarians. The extremely mobile and light Hungarian riders have spread fear and terror in the empire for decades. But this time, they stand no chance. With their swords, Otto's knights caused substantial loss for the Hungarians. Stefan Roth has been forging for more than 20 years, copying historical models, and knows that swords are far more than just brutal cutting weapons.
For me personally, medieval swords are incredibly fascinating, and long swords in particular, because I know precisely how these weapons are manufactured and how elaborate the whole forging process is.
The earliest finds from Arslan Tepe in Turkey date back more than 5,000 years. This means the history of swords is older than writing. The Romans used their short sword, the gladius. In late antiquity, they switched to a longer version, the Sparta. Teutons and Vikings also love longer swords and enshrine their favorite weapon in legends. To this day, the myths around Excalibur from the Arthurian legend live on. It rests within a stone. It is said to have magical powers.
Ganz besonders beim Schwert Excalibur ist es ja so, dass derjenige, der
The one who manages to take Excalibur out of the stone is said to be the rightful ruler of Britain.
ja quasi inne haben soll. Ein Schwert spiegelt natürlich
Swords represent power, claim to power, and are an integral part of many coronation ceremonies as regalia.
But real swords are also the subject of many myths, just like the Ulfbert, a Germanic sword from the early Middle Ages, forged between the 8th and 11th century. Archaeologists have found about 170 copies of it all over Europe. They all share one distinctive feature, the inscription, Ulfbert.
What we're looking at here is a trademark. It's a brand. It's a way of selling a product by saying this is a quality product. Everybody knows this mark equals good.
Precious swords are also a status symbol for noblemen in the Middle Ages. Archaeologists, however, regularly find blades marked Ulfbert of significantly lower quality. Were these just cheap copies of the popular brand? Product counterfeiting in the Middle Ages?
Eine bewährte Marke, wahrscheinlich ein Schmied Ulfberg.
A renowned brand, probably a forger called Ulfberg, who manufactures a special weapon, gets copied. Usually the material is inferior, but just like today, there were different buyers for different quality levels. There were swords of high quality and those of rather poor quality in the Middle Ages, depending on the amount of money the buyer was willing to spend. If you want a superior weapon, you have to be willing to invest in it too.
Over the course of the Middle Ages, simple armor evolves into more stable plate armor. Knights no longer need shields, but can use both hands to swing a longer, heavier sword at the enemy. And they have to, because their opponents are also clad in massive iron suits of armor. Knights fighting with a light single-handed sword no longer stand a chance. Around the same time, but on the other side of the world, in Japan, samurai warriors fight with a katana, another two-handed sword.
It's a very, very aggressive weapon, whereas a sword and shield combination gives you options. A two-handed sword gives you no option. You attack. You attack until you kill the enemy. And the strokes you use to kill the enemy, which the Japanese still teach in kendo, mostly involve chopping off the head and right arm.
Stefan Roth has examined both longswords for years. The katana is known as the masterpiece of Far Eastern weapons technology. The blade is curved, single-edged, and 60 to 75 centimeters long. The longsword, on the other hand, has a broad double-edged blade with a very sharp point and measures 80 to 120 centimeters. The expert knows the advantages and disadvantages of both weapons. Which one is the better sword? The historical forging technique is basically the same for both. Stefan Roth folds the scorching hot iron bars several times in order to obtain steel which is as stable as possible.
This folding process is a cleaning process. We have to get rid of the slag, ashes and charcoal that remain within the material. If I want to forge a sword, I need the best material I can get. And of course, I am trying to make it as refined as possible in order to obtain steel that is relatively homogeneous.
In the beginning, the carbon molecules within the steel are not distributed equally. By folding the steel repeatedly, however, Stefan Roth can blend them together in a more homogeneous way. Unlike the belief held by some samurai fans, medieval Japanese blacksmiths neither had better steel nor superior forging techniques. Roth is convinced Europe's sword manufacturers could compete with them, and in some cases even produce better weapons.
When it comes to stability, European longswords totally outperform their Japanese counterparts. For example, because the blade is completely hardened throughout. This is not the case for Japanese swords.
This can be achieved by heating the steel and quickly placing it in water to cool it. This way, the metal becomes much harder.
This means the Japanese sword cannot withstand impacts from the side. It bends, it doesn't bounce back. This sword has a rhombic section. Depending on how thick the blade is, it is technically almost like a crowbar that you place on the armor where you intend to penetrate. And then, well, for the man wearing the armor, this is anything but comfortable.
The direct comparison shows both swords are about 8 millimeters thick, but the longsword has a rhombic cross-section. This makes it more stable. In addition to that, it is completely hardened throughout, whereas this is only the case for the sharp edge of the blade on a Japanese katana. But how well do both swords perform in real life? Stefan Roth wants to find out, together with katana warrior Alexander Mantai, who is an expert in Asian martial arts. Can the longsword cut through a 1.5 millimeter metal plate? And how will the extremely sharp Japanese katana perform? Despite Alexander's targeted blow, the katana can only cut through half of the steel. With his longsword, Stefan Roth manages to get through the entire steel plate. Our next test: how well do both weapons penetrate? And indeed, the Katana pierces through the steel plate with its point.
Das europäische Schwert ist natürlich dafür prädestiniert zu.
The European sword is of course predestined for penetrating because it is long, pointed, and most of all straight. This means the energy can be directed at one point. You can see very nicely how deep the blade has penetrated the metal. Just imagine you'd have a knight wearing armor of maybe not the best quality. It could very well be possible that the sword goes through it.
The direct comparison reveals the longsword penetrates the steel twice as deep. But both swords would have probably failed if the steel had been any thicker. Nevertheless, the massive blows of the longsword have a particularly brutal effect, also on the armor-clad knight.
Das Langschwert hat eine gewisse Länge, wie schon.
Like the name suggests, the long sword must be a certain length and comes with a certain weight too. If you strike a blow, it's very important to calculate the energy resulting from this movement. And energy can be calculated mainly based on two factors. One, the weight, and two, the speed. A long sword is of course suitable if it's used very quickly to transfer a very large amount of energy.
Und selbst wenn eine Rüstung getragen wird, kommt
And even if the opponent is wearing armor, the energy still hits their body.
Verletzungen.
Depending on where it hits them, they can suffer injuries like subcutaneous bleeding, broken bones, or internal bleeding that can later reach the brain, for example.
To this day, the prevailing image is that the Japanese samurai battle techniques are superior to those of medieval knights. But is it really true? Stefan Roth and Katana warrior Alexander Mantai want to compare the options that both weapons offer. The single-edged katana comes first. Alexander cuts through the rolled mat 4 times without any effort. The double-edged European longsword allows for other swordplay techniques.
The difference between the single-edged and the double-edged swords is that he has to turn his hand. We have a natural hand position and maybe only save a millisecond. But in battle, a real-life battle, this could mean life or death.
In reality, the two swords never actually met blade to blade on the battlefield. The medieval European longsword, a supreme discipline. Books on battle techniques provide proof of the degree of sophistication of the European sword combat techniques, like the Italian fior di battaglia, the flower of battle from the early 15th century. Such books mostly present the techniques used in duels or exhibition fights and seem quite brutal to a modern audience.
I think the depictions of the violence that were used with the long swords in the Middle Ages was completely very barbaric. If we compare to modern times, however, I don't think that they were necessarily any more barbaric than things that we've seen in recent years. We've seen levels of torture over the past 100 years that are just as barbaric as the things we see in the Middle Ages. So I think it was just a different time with different weapons that could do horrific amounts of harm.
The Codex Wallenstein is another martial arts manual dating back to the 15th century. It does indeed depict the versatility of long swords, but it also shows how merciless the fighting techniques were. We see, for example, the half-sword thrust. You hold the sword like a billiard cue and thrust into the gaps of the opponent's armor. The names of other techniques speak for themselves. Translated, they mean mouth blow, murder strike, or testicle strike. In the late Middle Ages, the longsword is less frequently used in battle, but still plays an important role in duels between knights. It often serves to establish the truth, as they say. The outcome of the duel is seen as a judgment of God. The katana also holds a particular symbolic value for the samurai, the Japanese warrior elite. Over the course of time, the lethal military weapon becomes a prestige object laden with ritual meaning.
The sword is something of enormous mythic significance across all cultures, but in some particularly. For Japan, the sword is the ultimate expression of identity, both as a personal possession and as a way of representing who the Japanese think they are.
Swords and their successors remain dreaded close combat weapons well into the modern era. They were eventually phased out for soldiers and replaced with firearms, pikes, and lastly, bayonets. But this doesn't mean swords fall into oblivion. The medieval wonder weapon lives on to this day, for representative purposes and in the various disciplines of fencing. The triumphal march of firearms does not only end the age of swords. Constant improvements also make rifles the dominating weapon of an entire era. One particularly crucial and destructive design is the Henry rifle. (1861), the beginning of the American Civil War. The Unionists from the North fight the Confederates from the southern states. The standard weapon of the North is the Springfield rifle, a muzzle loader with high accuracy. But the reloading process is cumbersome, and it takes a lot of time. A quite simple invention will change that. Almost overnight, the Henry rifle increases the rate of fire remarkably. Similar developments take place in Europe at the same time. A shooting range near Gotha, Thuringia, Germany. Wolfgang Staber builds and collects historical firearms. There is hardly a 19th century weapon that fascinates him quite like the Henry.
I feel like a pioneer in the Wild West. This weapon was a game changer not only for the American continent, it's made world history.
The American gunsmith Benjamin Tyler Henry gives the weapon its name. The magazine holds 15 cartridges. One additional round can be loaded in the barrel. The rifle weighs about 4 kilograms. The barrel is 51 centimeters long. The most important detail: it can be reloaded with a lever located below the barrel.
When you pull the lever, the empty cartridge is ejected and the next round is brought into position. So you only need one movement to operate the weapon with greater ease and reliability.
I push the lever down and a new cartridge is loaded from the magazine into the chamber using a spring. And now it's in the chamber. As easy as that. Now I can fire, reload, and fire again.
The mechanism of the Henry repeating rifle. Via a small bar, the lever action transports a new cartridge into the barrel. At the same time, it ejects the empty shell. The hammer then fires the cartridge.
This weapon was a masterstroke. This is a tubular magazine. We have a spring that transports the projectile properly, and you turn the barrel at the front. So this whole thing is the tubular magazine, and it can take a lot of bullets.
The Henry is not the first lever-action repeating rifle. but the ammunition used by its predecessors is often unpredictable.
Sometimes when firing the weapon, they hit the percussion cap of the cartridge in front, causing it to ignite. That means that the whole magazine goes off at once and blasts the weapon completely. This leads to bad accidents, sometimes even fatal.
The Henry will become famous due to the stable rimfire cartridges it uses. Those are much safer because they work without a percussion cap. In combination with the repeater mechanism, which allows the cartridges to be reloaded very quickly, the invention becomes a deadly technology. The magazine on the Henry rifle has a gap on the lower side, a guidance bar for the push bolt. This is a weakness because mud can enter the magazine, a disadvantage in battle, and there's more.
They soon realize that the tubular magazine is a weak spot. If the weapon falls, the magazine can be dented. It's made of relatively thin metal, and then I can't reload the weapon anymore and can no longer shoot, obviously.
Nevertheless, compared to the muzzle-loader muskets of its era, the Henry rifle is a major leap forward. Benjamin Tyler Henry is smart. He knows if his rifle is successful with the military, he will become rich. He files a patent application for the rifle on the 16th of October 1860, about 5 months before the outbreak of the Civil War. A wise decision. Because the history of war has shown, if new weapons technology proves to be successful, everyone will try to copy it, including the enemy. This has been the practice of bellicose conflicts for millennia. But now, a new variable comes into play: the patent law. The earliest evidence of patent law traces back to ancient Greece, and it becomes a recurring topic in Europe from the 15th century onwards. The legal definition of patent law develops in the early 19th century and has close ties to weapons production.
Just before the age of industrialized mass production reaches hand weapons, rifles, pistols, intellectual property law changes so that it's possible to protect the design, the intellectual property in the construction of a weapon. Not the weapon itself, but the design and the principles on which it's based.
Weapons designers now become millionaires, just like Samuel Colt, who applies for a patent with his revolver mechanism in the mid-19th century. Other manufacturers are not allowed to copy his design. This sparks the most bizarre ideas. One competitor designs a revolver with a horizontally placed magazine. It turns like a record. The ammunition is placed in 6 holes on the sides. The turret pistol does not infringe Samuel Colt's patent rights, but it is a threat to the shooter's life. The cartridges sometimes go off uncontrollably into all directions. It is also thanks to patent law that the armament business is flourishing today around the globe. Every year, defense spending worldwide amounts to about $1.7 trillion US. Back to the shooting range near Gotha. Wolfgang Staber wants to find out how fast he can fire 10 shots with Benjamin Tyler Henry's patented rifle.
So I insert 9 cartridges, repeat them once, making the whole thing safe, releasing again, and then I open the weapon and place the 10th cartridge into it. And now 10 shots of rapid fire.
We will stop the timer after the last shot has been fired.
We needed 8.8 seconds, less than 1 second per shot. That's fantastic.
More than 1 shot per second. In the 19th century, this was a quantum leap. For the Unionists of the American Civil War, the Henry rifle should be an enormous advantage. But the high rate of fire is exactly what puts the generals off. They think cartridges would be shot too fast, the ammunition consumption would be too high, and that railway and horses could not provide sufficient supply. A superior weapon that is rarely deployed for logistic reasons.
The weapon had enormous firepower. That means troops needed a lot of ammunition, which was expensive, as was the weapon itself. So the American generals were really hesitant. They only bought 1,700 of the Henry because they were worried they couldn't get hold of enough ammunition.
Soldiers who can afford it get a Henry on their own, hoping that it would increase their chances of survival. By the end of the war, about 7,000 of these rifles are in use. A comparison: more than 1 million Springfield muzzleloaders are built during the same period. Meanwhile, in Europe, another technology conquers the battlegrounds. With its extreme rate of fire, the breech-loading needle gun by German inventor von Dreiser leads European war tactics into cover. The Henry rifle never makes it to Europe, and still many Germans know it as the Henry carbine used by Old Shatterhand, a character from German author Karl May's Winnetou series. In the novels, the weapon is, however, said to be able to fire 25 shots, an exaggeration. Which advantage does the real Henry bring in battle? Weapons expert Wolfgang Staber tests how efficient the repeating rifle is compared to muzzleloaders. 4 experienced shooters are facing each other in teams of 2. Left in turquoise, the northern states with the Henry rifle. Right in red, the southern states with the Springfield muskets, the most frequently used weapon in the US Civil War. How many targets will the teams be able to hit in 2 minutes?
So, everything safe, we can begin. This is the timer. We'll start it in a moment. Give it your best shot, I'll do the same. We want to win. Live experiment, north versus south.
Both groups have to load their weapons first. The northerners with the Henry load 10 shots for the experiment. The southerners with the muzzleloader can load just 1 at a time. Turquoise is in the lead. The repeater rifle makes them faster, and their shots actually hit a couple of the targets. The southerners in red have to reload after every shot, but their muskets are more accurate. Who will win?
There's so much smoke, you can hardly see anything, but I'm glad we hit something. This is a pretty cool experience. It's great.
The first one went right through and hit one of the targets. I'm not sure about the second because, like Romy just said, there is just too much smoke and you can't see well.
A soldier fires a lot, but does he actually hit something?
The evaluation shows 3 out of 5 shots fired by the muzzleloader group were a hit, whereas the Henry rifle shooters have fired 25 shots and have 10 hits.
We fired a lot, but if you extrapolate that, we actually performed worse because we let ourselves get carried away and fired quickly instead of aiming well. The others took their time. They knew they were slower, but in the end, if you look at the outcome, they fired better.
The result, regarding the total number of hits, the Henry prevails over the muzzleloader. An additional advantage is that soldiers feel superior in battle when they can fire faster and more often.
The side that has the superior weapons will have a sense of power, that we are the stronger enemy and we can overtake you, and therefore you're inferior to us, so they will feel confident and powerful, which will make them stronger and give them more enthusiasm to be able to go on and take their enemy.
For 4 years, the Civil War tears the country apart. Roughly 620,000 people lose their lives. On the 23rd of June 1865, the last of the Southern troops surrender. This marks a watershed in American history. After this war, repeater rifles gain in popularity. An advanced version of the Henry is just around the corner. The Winchester is supposed to make up for the downsides of its predecessor.
So, the successor. Like all new designs, the first models have their flaws. There are still construction issues. But they soon found out that something wasn't running smoothly and quickly modified it. So this is the technical success of the Yankee rifle, manufactured by Winchester in 1866. And the differences were quite simple. You see a front stock here, which protects me from the heat of the barrel, and of course you see the tubular magazine. They soon found out that the magazine was easily damaged and then you couldn't fire it anymore. It wasn't good for anything anymore. So they changed it. And there's another novelty, and that is that you can load it from here on the side. That means if I take the weapon now, I'm able to reload it from cover here. I don't have to take that off like this if I want to reload. Way too complicated. That means this design that they came up with in 1866 was truly an ingenious weapon.
Eventually, the 1873 model will become the most successful rifle of its time and will later feature in many westerns. This is due to the fact that weapons designer Oliver Winchester actively helped in building the myth.
Winchester is a canny operator, rather like Samuel Colt. He's not the engineer, he's the market man. He invents the idea that this is the gun that won the West. He creates a mythology about the Winchester as something special, something defiantly American, something unique in particular.
The Henry opens new ways for the rate of fire of rifles. Only 14,000 copies are made because the market soon is flooded with successor models. Today, original Henry rifles are sought-after collectibles. Which deadly inventions will mark the wars of the future? After firepower has been optimized, it seems like robots are about to take the lead. Autonomous battle machines that make it possible to fight wars without losing soldiers. Will they decide on life and death on their own?
Of course, in the future, the gun may be in the hands of an autonomous robotic device which will make reasoned choices about who to kill, and even then it will still be the human that's driving the process because the program will have been written by a human. We're not yet in a world where machines kill people.
Not yet, but many armies are already experimenting with autonomous machines for transporting heavy loads or to carry out other tasks.
This move towards autonomous weapons, towards weapons that we can fire without having to actually get physically involved in battle, is inevitable. We have the technology, so we will do this. Science fiction isn't science or fiction, it's probably where we're going.
First tests have shown machines are already able to keep up with human beings in many situations, and sometimes even outdo them. But until now, it is still a human who dictates every action a robot takes. The advancements in artificial intelligence, however, will have an impact on warfare. Life and death decisions made by a microchip. From a technical point of view, autonomous drone swarms will soon be able to find and attack targets without human guidance. The future has already begun.